A brother betrays his sister in a ruthless battle for inheritance, but the fortune he craves quickly slips through his fingers, leaving him to face the bitter cost of treachery. The death of their parents left a heavy silence in the Carrington household. Emma Carrington, 32, with her calm brown eyes and steady grace, stood beside the coffin, holding back tears. Her younger brother, Daniel Carrington, 29, was there too, dressed in a sharp black suit, his restless eyes scanning the crowd rather than honoring the moment. Emma had always been the responsible one. She cared for their ailing parents through long nights, hospital visits, and endless worries. Daniel, on the other hand, had drifted in and out of the family home, chasing business ventures that collapsed as quickly as they began. Now their parents' vast estate, properties, investments, and priceless heirlooms stood between them. Emma never saw it as wealth, but as memories of their parents' sacrifices. Daniel saw it as his long-awaited jackpot. As mourners whispered condolences, Daniel whispered to himself, "This is my chance." Emma didn't notice the storm brewing in her brother's heart. She believed grief would bring them closer. Daniel believed inheritance would finally set him free. Neither imagined that this inheritance would become the weapon that tore their blood bond apart. In the weeks after the funeral, the lawyer invited Emma and Daniel to the mahogany-paneled office where the will would be read. Emma wore a simple navy dress, hair tied back neatly, while Daniel arrived with a gold watch glinting on his wrist, a watch he had bought on borrowed money. As the lawyer explained the will, Emma felt relief. Their parents had left everything to be split equally between the siblings. She thought fairness would prevent conflict. But for Daniel, equal wasn't enough. Behind his polite smile, envy boiled. He believed he deserved more, claiming he was the true heir who could grow the fortune. That night, Daniel's bitterness deepened. He drank alone in his sleek apartment, muttering about Emma's undeserved share. He remembered his failed ventures, his mounting debts, and the wealthy friends who mocked him. To them, he was a man with potential but no results. If I had all the inheritance, he thought, I'd finally prove them wrong. From that night forward, Daniel's plan began to form. His smile toward Emma grew warmer, but his intentions turned colder. He would not allow his sister to keep what he believed was his birthright. Emma believed family bonds were stronger than money. She often invited Daniel for dinner, serving their mother's recipes to keep traditions alive. She wore her modest smile, her chestnut hair pulled into a loose bun, while Daniel arrived in flashy clothes, each outfit a silent reminder of his hunger for status. Over candlelight, Daniel spoke softly, praising Emma for her kindness, pretending to admire her dedication to their parents. Emma's heart softened, grateful her brother was finally showing maturity. But behind every compliment, Daniel's mind calculated. He studied Emma's habits, her trust, her routine, her willingness to share everything without suspicion. To Emma, Daniel was her only remaining family. To Daniel, Emma was an obstacle to be removed. He promised her partnership, saying they'd manage the estate together. Emma, tired from grief, agreed wholeheartedly. She saw his charm as sincerity, unaware it was the mask of betrayal. Each smile Daniel flashed was rehearsed, every gentle word sharpened like a knife. Emma saw her brother as a source of comfort. Daniel saw her as the key to unlocking riches he was already claiming as his own. Daniel's deception grew like a spider's web. He forged connections with greedy lawyers and shady bankers, whispering that Emma was too naive to handle her share. He began spreading rumors in their social circles, subtle at first, that Emma was emotionally unstable, still trapped in grief, and incapable of managing wealth. Emma, with her natural humility, never noticed. She wore simple clothes, rarely spoke of money, and avoided the spotlight. Meanwhile, Daniel paraded himself as the confident younger brother ready to save the family name. He attended exclusive parties, shaking hands with people who only valued his inheritance, not his character. He even flirted with women who admired his apparent rise in fortune, flashing the charm he had sharpened like a blade. The lies soon reached their lawyer, who quietly began doubting Emma's capacity. Papers were drafted, deals whispered, contracts altered, all without her knowledge. Daniel's scheme was unfolding with ruthless precision, yet for all his cunning he forgot one truth. Lies once spun too wide can collapse under their own weight. Emma, though trusting, wasn't blind. Subtle changes unsettled her. A banker once called her to confirm a transfer she had never authorized. A letter arrived with her signature forged at the bottom. At first, she thought it was clerical error, but as incidents repeated, she felt the sting of betrayal brushing against her conscience. One evening, she visited the family's countryside estate, a place filled with their parents' laughter and warmth. Dressed in a long beige coat, she wandered the halls, running her fingers across portraits. She remembered her father's warning. Greed can blind even those closest to you. The words echoed like a prophecy. Her heart told her Daniel was hiding something, yet her loyalty to him held her back. Could her brother truly betray her? She dismissed the thought, convincing herself stress was clouding her judgment. But deep down the silent warnings were growing louder. Emma didn't yet know it, but the storm Daniel had summoned was already circling her life. Daniel's betrayal finally sharpened into action. Late one night he forged documents transferring key properties into his name. He leaned over the desk, the glow of a lamp highlighting his sharp jawline, his hands steady despite the crime. He told himself it was not theft, it was destiny. With each forged stroke of Emma's signature his greed thickened. The next day Emma met him for lunch, wearing a simple green blouse, her eyes warm and trusting. Daniel smiled across the table, handing her flowers as if nothing had happened. She laughed, thanking him, never suspecting the papers already stripping her of half her inheritance. In Daniel's world, victory tasted sweet. He had manipulated lawyers, convinced banks, and sealed his plan. Emma, meanwhile, was unknowingly being written out of her own legacy. But the foundation of Daniel's triumph was fragile, built on lies, fraud, and arrogance. What he couldn't see was that every stolen coin carried the weight of karma, waiting patiently for the right moment to strike. At first, Daniel basked in his success. He bought a luxury car, tailored suits, and dined in elite restaurants. He was admired by shallow friends who toasted to his business genius. Emma, confused but silent, watched her brother's sudden rise but chose not to confront him. She hoped he was finally achieving stability, unaware it was funded by her loss. But cracks soon appeared. The properties Daniel acquired required maintenance he couldn't afford. Tenants grew restless, repairs drained his finances, and his lavish lifestyle quickly outweighed his income. The bankers who once smiled at him began pressing for payments. The shady allies who had helped him with forged contracts demanded their share. Daniel, once proud and untouchable, now found himself juggling lies. His phone buzzed with threats, his nights drowned in whiskey and anxiety. Emma remained calm, still unaware of the full betrayal, but she sensed Daniel was spiraling. She offered help, but he waved her off, too prideful to admit weakness. What Daniel failed to realize was that the wealth he stole was never a blessing, it was a curse unraveling before his eyes. Emma finally began piecing the truth together. She discovered missing account statements and irregular property records. Her name scratched out, replaced with Daniel's. Shock struck her like cold steel. Sitting at her wooden desk in the countryside estate, she reread the documents over and over, her trembling hands unable to accept what her eyes revealed. The betrayal was undeniable. Memories of her sleepless nights caring for their parents clashed with the reality of Daniel's theft. She felt anger rising, but sadness outweighed it. How could her own brother sink this low? Her face, pale with grief, carried not only the pain of lost wealth, but the wound of lost trust. Yet Emma wasn't weak. She decided to consult a lawyer, quietly gathering evidence without Daniel's knowledge. Her soft demeanor hid a newfound determination. If Daniel believed she would remain silent, he underestimated her. Emma swore she would not let her parents' legacy be swallowed by greed. For the first time, the loyal sister no longer saw her brother as family. She saw him as an adversary. And when family turns into an enemy, the war is far more devastating. Daniel's empire of lies was crumbling fast. Bills piled up, properties slipped into disrepair. His so-called friends vanished as soon as the money slowed. Alone in his penthouse, with the city skyline mocking him, he stared into his whiskey glass, his reflection distorted and hollow. His once bright eyes now carried dark circles, and his once sharp suits hung loosely on his frame. He began gambling on risky investments, hoping to turn losses into gains. Instead, he sank deeper. Creditors hounded him, threatening lawsuits and ruin. Fear gnawed at him, but pride kept him from reaching out to Emma. Instead, he told more lies, borrowing money from dangerous people, promising returns that would never come. The brother who once stood tall at glamorous parties was now hiding in shadows, running from the very empire he built. Daniel's betrayal had won him wealth for a season, but it came with chains he could no longer break. Every step forward felt like sinking deeper into quicksand. Emma could no longer remain silent. She arranged a meeting at the countryside estate where their parents were buried. She wore a black coat, her eyes no longer soft but blazing with determination. Daniel arrived late, dressed in his wrinkled designer suit, his arrogance cracked but still clinging to his voice. "Why, Daniel?" Emma asked quietly, her voice trembling with both fury and heartbreak. "Why would you betray me?" Daniel smirked, though his eyes revealed panic. "I deserved it, Emma. You never understood. You were the favorite. I had to fight for scraps. This inheritance was my chance to finally rise." Emma's heart shattered. She realized her brother's greed wasn't just about money, it was about jealousy, festering since childhood. But her silence ended there. She laid down the evidence she had gathered, forged contracts, altered signatures, and bank records. Daniel's face turned pale as his empire collapsed in front of him, this time with no lies to protect him. For the first time, Emma stood not as his sister but as his rival. Emma's lawyer moved swiftly. The courtroom became the battlefield where blood ties dissolved into bitter enemies. Emma sat tall in a navy suit, her brown eyes steady, holding the moral ground. Daniel, disheveled and cornered, wore desperation like a second skin. Witnesses testified. Bankers revealed shady transactions. Handwriting experts confirmed the forged signatures. Piece by piece, the truth was laid bare for all to see. Daniel tried to charm the jury, spinning tales of misunderstanding, but his lies collapsed under evidence too strong to deny. Emma spoke only once, her voice firm yet sorrowful. This was never about wealth. It was about trust, and my brother broke it. Her words echoed in the silent courtroom, piercing Daniel deeper than any judgment. The verdict stripped Daniel of his stolen inheritance, returning Emma's rightful share. But victory did not heal the wound. For Emma, justice brought closure, not joy. For Daniel, shame and ruin replaced his fleeting glory. Daniel walked out of court a broken man. The cameras that once admired him now captured his downfall. His so-called friends vanished completely, unwilling to associate with a disgraced fraud. Creditors circled like vultures, lawsuits multiplied, and the luxury items he once flaunted were repossessed one by one. Alone in his dim apartment, stripped of wealth and reputation, Daniel stared into the emptiness he had created. The sharp suits, the fast cars, the glittering nights, gone. All that remained was silence, regret, and the bitter taste of his own choices. Emma, meanwhile, returned to her quiet life, managing her inheritance with grace and honoring her parents' legacy. But the loss of her brother's loyalty remained a scar. She had saved her wealth, but she had lost the family bond she once cherished. Daniel finally understood the truth his father once told him. Greed consumes everything, even love. By betraying his sister, he had not only lost his fortune, he had lost himself. Daniel once thrived on attention, but after the trial, every door that once opened for him was slammed shut. Business partners distanced themselves, whispers followed him in the streets, and former friends crossed the road to avoid him. At parties where he had once been the star, his name was now spoken as a warning. Emma, though vindicated, avoided gloating. She refused to smear her brother further, believing his shame was punishment enough. Yet Daniel could not escape the ghost of his reputation. Each morning he woke to headlines that painted him as a backstabbing sibling, a man who traded blood for gold. The truth became his permanent shadow, following him into every corner of his life. What Daniel had sought most, respect and admiration, was gone forever, and unlike money, reputation could never be bought back. Emma poured her energy into rebuilding what was broken. She renovated the family estate, preserving their parents' memory with care. She invested wisely, ensuring the inheritance grew not just for her but for future generations. In quiet moments she sat by the fireplace, sipping tea, reflecting on the storm she had endured. Though the betrayal scarred her heart, Emma found healing in kindness. She donated to charities her parents once supported, funded scholarships, and gave back to the community. People admired her humility, calling her a woman of strength and honor. But even as she smiled in public, Emma sometimes wept in private. For though she had saved the inheritance, she had lost her brother to greed. Family dinners became lonely, laughter absent from the halls. Healing was not about forgetting, she realized, but about choosing peace over pain. Meanwhile, Daniel spiraled further. His debts mounted, forcing him into smaller and smaller apartments. His once proud wardrobe was pawned off piece by piece, until only wrinkled shirts and worn shoes remained. Nights found him wandering empty streets, haunted by visions of the life he destroyed. Friends who once cheered him now mocked him. Women who once admired him turned away in disgust. He became invisible to the world that once celebrated him. Worse still, his conscience tormented him. He saw Emma's betrayed eyes whenever he closed his own. Daniel realized too late that betrayal may win riches for a season, but it leaves nothing but ashes in the end. His fall was not from wealth, it was from grace. Daniel's health began to crumble under the weight of regret. Sleepless nights etched lines on his face. His restless drinking turned into dependency. Every phone call filled him with dread, every knock on the door with fear of another debt collector. He often sat alone with the family photo album, staring at images of him and Emma as children, two smiling faces once inseparable. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered apologies no one could hear. He wanted forgiveness, yet his pride chained him from reaching out. The wealth he had stolen slipped through his hands like sand, leaving nothing but regret. And regret, he learned, was heavier than any fortune. One winter evening, Daniel finally gathered the courage to visit Emma. He arrived at the estate gates, shivering in a torn coat. his once proud figure reduced to a frail shadow. Emma, standing in the doorway with calm dignity, looked at him with eyes both sorrowful and cautious. He fell to his knees. "I ruined everything, Emma. I don't ask for your money. I just want forgiveness." His voice cracked, raw with sincerity. Emma's heart wavered. She remembered the cruelty, the lies, the betrayal, but also the boy who once held her hand when they were children. She helped him up, guiding him inside. For the first time in years, Daniel felt warmth not from wealth, but from mercy. Forgiveness did not erase his sins, but it opened a door he thought forever closed. Emma allowed Daniel small chances to prove his sincerity. She offered him work on the estate, modest tasks that taught him humility. No longer the arrogant man flaunting luxury, Daniel rose early, worked hard, and slowly rebuilt trust brick by brick. Neighbors who once scorned him began to nod politely again. The whispers never vanished, they softened as Daniel's actions proved genuine change. Emma watched cautiously, her trust scarred, but she saw flickers of the brother she once loved. Rebuilding bridges was not quick, but stone by stone Daniel began to understand that true wealth was not gold or property, it was trust, loyalty, and family. Years later, Daniel stood in the same countryside estate where his betrayal had begun. His face bore wrinkles of wisdom, his hands rough from honest work. Emma sat beside him, her warm smile softened by forgiveness. They no longer spoke of inheritance, it had long ceased to matter. Daniel reflected on the path he had walked, from betrayal to ruin, from shame to redemption. He realized his greatest inheritance was never the wealth of his parents, it was the chance to rebuild his soul, gifted by his sister's grace. The lesson was carved deeply into his life. Greed destroys, but love restores. In the end, Emma ensured their parents' legacy was preserved not in riches, but in values. The estate thrived, serving as a place of peace, charity, and remembrance. Daniel, though scarred by his past, became a man humbled by experience, his arrogance replaced by gratitude. Together, they honored their parents not through wealth but through unity. The betrayal that once shattered them became the story that redefined them. Emma forgave, Daniel repented, and in that fragile balance they found a new beginning. The backstabbing sibling who once traded blood for gold had learned the greatest truth: no fortune could ever outweigh the value of family.